Hi, I'm Krista Johnson. Theodore and I are going to do a video on preparing to canter on a circle. I haven't actually seen him canter yet. We've been working on getting him to follow a feel off the rope from a walk to a trot transition, and then using our indirect rein for a trot to walk transition. If you haven't worked on any of this stuff with your horse, check out my videos. Forward is the most underrated F word, and upward and downward transitions on a training circle for more information on that. But we'll get started with where he's at today and kind of show you some things that we'll get working to make sure that he's going to be ready when I go to ask him to canter. He still needs to be a little bit more physically fit, but I want to make sure that we're working on all these individual pieces that are going to be important when it comes to cantering. He needs to be able to walk and trot off of a feel off the rope. He needs to do a hindquarter yield, forequarter yield, and a drift. But we'll get started here. Put him in a parking position. Send him out here. We'll start to the right. I want him to think about picking his front end up and yielding it over. It's going to be really important for him to learn to swing his shoulders for when he goes to pick up those canter leads. That wasn't the best turn, so I might actually try that again. Keeping in mind what we're working on, if he's not swinging those shoulders and being athletic with his front end, and I just allow him to keep doing that, then I'm not really taking time to prepare him to pick up his leads very well. I want him to pick up that front left and step it over. There it goes. Front right, step it over. Good, much better. I'm going to go forward, come back to our circle over here. I don't want him crowding my space. A little bit miscommunication going on here. He's not quite sure. Just try to direct him the best I can. Just let him know I just want him to walk a circle here to the right. Put me in the saddle. Stay out of my 4-foot bubble that goes 360 degrees around me. And to not worry about my stick if I'm not talking to him with the rein first. Yes, I call my rope a rein because everything I do with it on the ground is going to help him understand what the reins mean when I go to ride him someday. So we got the walk established here. I'm going to slide my hand down the rope a little bit to shorten it. I use both hands to do that. I'll slide my hand down, put a feel on it. It's kind of like picking up the contact if you're riding. And I want to stretch my hand kind of out forward and level. And I want to see if he can follow the feel off of that. When he goes forward, I'll give him that rein back. If he does not follow through with the feel on the rein, that's where I'm going to take my stick, drive it forward to push his hock towards his nose. But I want him to follow the feel off the rope primarily. If I need to support him with the stick, I will. And then I just want him to do the same thing. Just trot a circle to the right, put me in the saddle, and stay out of my 4-foot bubble. I like that he's blowing out there. I give him a second to think about whatever he's thinking about there. The more I get to know him, I kind of initially thought he was more of a confident sort of introvert, but he's starting to kind of tell me and show me more that, at least in a learning environment, he's starting to tell me he's a little bit more of an unconfident introvert. So you can get a little bit wallflower-like at times, to where he's really stoic about things. So I'm going to ask for that trot again. I'm going to stretch my hand out forward and level. And I want to think about swinging that snap out in front of his nose. Since he's not following that, that's where I'm going to take my stick, come out behind him. So that boundary behind your tail's catching up to you. I want him to think of driving the hock towards the nose. I'm going to put my hand back in neutral on my right hip. So we're riding on a loose rein. I want it to be his responsibility. If that slack comes out of the rope, it needs to talk to his feet. Either he needs to speed up, slow down, or engage his hindquarters more. I don't want him to go around pulling on me. That's going to be really, really, really important when I go to ask him to canter. If he's already pulling on me in the walk or trot, I'm probably not going to have a prayer of getting a nice canter transition or a nice canter to shape up. So if your horse is already going around pulling on you, work on getting them light on that first. I want to get them trotting. I want them to think of maintaining that and me not have to remind him as much, but we had to work quite a bit on getting him motivated to go forward. There, I'm going to slide my hand down the rein. That was too much, but that's okay. I slid my hand down the rein to use my indirect rein, and I'm kind of pointing my rein hand towards behind where the stirrup would be, like maybe about there. And he did the right thing. He stepped his hind end under. But I want him to start thinking sometimes that means come down to a walk. It doesn't always mean disengage to a stop. So he had kind of a general preschool understanding of that when he showed up here, but I want him to start building on that surface level understanding of that indirect rein. I'm going to slide my hand down here. I'm going to ask him to roll his hindquarters around. I'm not worried about him stepping on the rope. It's not a big deal. I want him going forward and around with his hindquarters making the bigger circle and his forequarters making the smaller circle. I'm going to lift my hand towards his croup, encourage him to set his weight back, and then I'm already set up to send him the other way. Good. I like how he picked up that front right foot, stepped it over, picked up the front left, and stepped it over. So he seems to be a little bit better, swinging his shoulders to the right than he is to the left. Here I want him to speed up a little bit so I'm in the saddle. I don't want to be riding on his neck. So there, I'm just going to give him a little tap and say, hey, can you put a little bit more pep in your step? He does have a little bit more of a tendency to crowd me going to the left, so I'll just remind him. All these little bits and pieces are new to him. This is just beginning of week 2 of him being here. Same thing this way. I'm going to put that feel on the rope. I shorten the rope. I like how he's thinking trot. Do you see how he thought about that? I'm going to reward him for that. I don't care there how much he stops. I'm not going to be particular about the stop here. I want him to think about that lovely transition he just did. That was very light. And I saw him thinking about shifting his weight and doing something different with his feet. When we go to do upward transitions, I don't want him to think just go faster and just throw themselves into it and, oh no, I got to go faster. I want him to think, shift my weight and do something different with my feet. He had to shift his weight from being 60% on the forehand, 40% on the hind end to 50-50, and then just changing the rhythm of his feet to that 2-beat diagonal. And he was very, very, very lovely about that. Like, that could not have went better for no more than we've practiced this. In the future, I want him to be a little bit more punctual about it, but I want to reward the thought. If I would have said, hey, you're taking too long and came in to support my stick with my stick, that might be too much, or it might make him think that he's not doing something correctly. But when I see him think, hey, I think that means trot, and I saw him think it again, hey, I think that means trot, and then I saw him start to shift his weight to make that transition. It does not get better than that. And he's thinking really, really hard there, and the more I'm getting to know him, like, he really needs time to stop and think, and sometimes for long periods of time. So if you have an extroverted horse and you're used to one that wants to move around more and think while their feet are moving, great, but if you have more of an introverted horse, watching some of Theodore's videos might be interesting to you because your horse might be similar. There's times where he'll stand for an hour and just think, and I'll just stand there with him if I have the time. It's really important. A lot of times we can just get their feet moving and not really have them thinking about what they're doing with their feet, and we can't figure out why we've been practicing the same things for, weeks, months, maybe even years, and not making any progress, or the horse doesn't really seem to know what they're doing without guidance. We got to get the message to the mind. We can use the feet to get to the mind, and the mind to get to the feet. But I'm really, really happy with the progress he made with that transition there, and that he's standing there thinking about it. And the good thing about this, even though it kind of looks like we're being lazy for a minute, or for several minutes, is I'm going to make so much more progress allowing this to happen. If I just try to push him through it, I'm going to be overexposing him, and I do not want to do that. You really, really, really have to sometimes slow down for these introverts. And it's not like he'll have to stand and think about things for long periods of time forever. In the beginning stages, it'll seem that way, but I want him to start progressing, and I'm sure he will. He'll start progressing to where he can think more with his feet moving, and that he doesn't need to stop and really process that. But he's trusting me and trusting his environment, that he can stand there and have that space to really just digest what happened. And I really like that he's not putting his nose in the sand. That's something that I've noticed last few days or so, that he can kind of, it's kind of his sign of telling me he's a little bit maybe overstimulated. And that's where I'll just stop and let him think about things. So I'm really starting to learn that, he's not as, I hate to use the term, woo. What was that about, buddy? Something bite you? I really try not to touch them and pet on them when they're in that state, because they really kind of do go somewhere, and it's a positive thing in this case, but when they kind of get startled out of it, they can kind of get worried about something. I don't know if that was about a bug or something. He remembered he was still on Earth or what happened there, but he's been telling me the last couple of days that I need to slow down with him a little bit more and give him more time to think. And when he tells me that, I want to make sure that I'm respecting that and allowing that to happen. If I just try to rush through too many things and he doesn't really think about it, then he's not really going to retain anything that we did. He's just going to be like, yeah, we went in the arena and did a bunch of stuff, I survived, and went back to my dry lot. I want him to go back to his dry lot and continue to think about, hey, we did these walk to trot transitions off the rope, and when I follow that, I can avoid the stick, and I don't have to get, touched behind the hock. And when I get confident about going over the tarp or going under the pool noodles, we can be done with it. Or even if, I get confident going in the trailer, we can just load up in the trailer and unload and be done with it. It almost looks like he's kind of I tease him, sometimes he has that grumpy old man look, but he's really, really thinking. And sometimes they can often get, us as people kind of sometimes improperly label them as lazy or stubborn, whether they're more confident or unconfident. It's usually not that. They just really need their time to think, and they really have a hard time doing it while their feet are moving. but I want to help him. I want to help build his confidence and his skill set and being able to think his way through things while his feet are moving. That all happens over time, which I'm going to give him, but I'm going to allow him this time and this space to just absorb the lesson here. I apologize if this looks like, it's about as interesting as watching the grass grow or paint dry, but it can look fascinating. Some of us, he's really thinking about stuff there. Sometimes they'll kind of just flatten their ears back and then quickly bring them back and kind of have that sleepy look in their eye like they're taking a nap, but they're not. I am noticing he's breathing, but he's not like trying to shallow hide his breathing or anything, but he could probably be a little bit more relaxed in his breathing, but he does have his bottom lip drooping a little bit. Just observing some things. I'm going to see if I can just set the rope down here. Let's grab a quick drink while he's doing his thing. If I can get a refreshment real quick. I'm not trying to interrupt his thought process, but he might be concerned that I'm walking away a little bit. He's getting really good with his ground tying. For no more than we practice the 5 boundaries. That's where you just kind of take their strengths and build it into something really cool. Ground tying's a lot harder for, some of the extroverts that particularly don't like to stand still a whole lot. But for these introverts that are pretty content standing in one spot, you can just use that strength towards what you do with them. I'd prefer to ground tie them like that anyways when I get them out to groom them, when I do my saddling, when I pick up their feet. I won't say that I don't ever use cross ties, like I have used them, but I try not to rely on them. The reason being is the horse doesn't really understand their responsibility when they're in cross ties. They're just kind of being held there physically instead of understanding their responsibility of standing in a parking space and then having complete relief. There should be nothing pulling on them standing there. The rope is on the ground. Shouldn't be putting any pressure on his face other than just the weight of the halter and the rope. And that gives them that yes answer. It gives them that relief from pressure to tell him that he's in the right place. Quite often, I see people having trouble with their horses for whatever reason, that they won't do this or that or won't do it very well. And quite often, I just see that the horse doesn't understand where to be. They just don't know. We haven't made it clear to them. So the more clear we can tell them where to be, the better everything's going to get. Sometimes, like when we started, where I wanted him to be was just walking that circle to the right, staying out of my bubble, not pushing on me, not pulling on me, putting me in the position if I was in the saddle, so we have that good rein angle. And that was his place to be, where I would leave him alone. It could be the same thing when you're riding your horse down the trail or riding down the road. And you have your loose reins and your seats go on the gait, the walk that you're wanting them to do, and your legs aren't on them. They stay right between your reins and your legs and not feel any pressure. That's how they learn where to be. Sometimes helping them learn where to be when they don't know looks a lot like telling them where not to be. But I might stop the video here and then we'll continue when he wakes up a little bit out of his mentally processing, just to shorten the video a little bit. I think you've gotten to kind of see what it looks like a little bit and heard me talk about it a little bit more, but understand that it can take a while, and it just depends on the horse. Some horses might just need a couple minutes. He's processed for an hour one day after we shut the camera off last week, so not sure how long it'll take, but I'm just going to hang out with him and allow him this time and space to think, because that's where we're going to make the most progress. Because if I just keep drilling him over and over after he made so much progress with that very last walk to trot transition, I don't want him to think that that wasn't the right idea. I don't want him to start looking for different answers. That's why I stopped him pretty quickly and wasn't particular with how he stopped. Ooh, big stretch. Ooh, big stretch. Now he's kind of wanting to come closer and connect with me, maybe. We'll see. He's still thinking pretty hard. We'll stop the video for now. Maybe I'll edit 2 videos together or just do a part 2, but thank you for joining us. Hi, Theodore and I are going to pick up hopefully where we just left off. He had some time to mentally process quite a bit. So I think we were, I can't remember if we were going to the right or to the left, but I think we were going to the left. So I'm going to try to send him to the right. See if I can get him to follow the feel off that rope with his nose. He's still learning that, not quite coming off of the pressure there. And it's just a slight angle change of that snap that I want him to start paying attention to. Yep, he's better about turning his shoulders on the other to the left than he is here. And I ask him to go to the right, but we'll continue building on that. I'll put him back in the walk. It's his responsibility to stay with his nose behind my belly button, his tail in front of my shoulder, and out of my bubble here. I'm going to shorten my rope, put a feel on the rope forward, and try to angle that snap out in front of his nose if he doesn't follow that. I'm going to take the stick off my shoulder and slowly come behind, tap him a little bit above the hock, ask him to push his hock towards his nose. I'm going to ask for a downward transition and use my indirect rein, put a little feel on the rope there. I don't want him following in on my circle there. It's another important thing to not have them falling in on the circle with their shoulders before we ask him to canter. I'm going to ask him to trot again. There, I'm going to touch him with the string. I think it's a little bit more gentle than tapping him with the end of the stick if I can help it. So I'm just going to keep working on these transitions until he understands them a little bit better. So I really want him following that feel off that rope. That's going to be really important when it comes to asking him to canter. If he's having a hard time understanding that with the trot, then I'm not even going to ask him to canter because I already know how well it probably wouldn't go. That was good. That was really light, and I was able to reward his thought of coming down to the walk there. There we go. Not the prettiest transition. I'm not sure why he's picking his front feet up like that, but he's starting to understand. I thought he was. Maybe he's getting those shoulders elevated to pick up that canter. I don't know. I notice he does that sometimes, and then other times he doesn't. I'm not sure why. So I'm just going to keep working on this until I get a nice, smooth walk to trot transition off of a feel. I don't really want him thinking head up so much. There, he's blowing out. That's good. I'm going to ask again. I want him to start being able to think while his feet are moving. It's going to be a process for him, and I'm going to have to help him understand that he can do that. He typically wants to stop and process a lot, and I'll allow that a lot in the beginning, but as we go further, I want him to start to think that he can use his brain while his feet are in motion. It's going to be important when it comes time to go ride him. And we're just staying in the same direction. He thought stop. I just asked for a walk, but until this transition gets a little bit better there. So that would have been nice. I just want to see if I can get him to understand that that hop thing that he's doing is not desirable. So I'm just looking for him to follow that feel off the rope. There. And I'm going to be less particular about how he stops because that was another beautiful transition that he just gave me there. So if you're looking to teach your horse to canter off of a feel, off the rope, and maybe you haven't done it before, maybe you have and it doesn't go very well, get all these little things working really well. Just watch the video and see what parts I was rewarding and what I was looking for. I want that nice, thoughtful transition off of a feel and not to have to use my stick as much. It's okay to use the stick if they don't follow the feel off the rope, but that's just support. I don't want to rely on that forever. It's really important to get them to follow the feel off the rope to get that canter transition. Thank you for joining us.